Are aliens real? Are they visiting us? Are the origins of our universe more mysterious than any of us ever thought? Let's talk about all of this and so much more. Join me in my existential crisis as we dive into the top 10 concerning alien evidence America is hiding from us. Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have they might have died off. This one is a bit disappointing, to be honest, okay? Bad news first, good news later. But it's basically just a theory that it's probably pretty likely that there were aliens at some point, but since the universe is so old, they might have already died out. All life and cultures rise and fall, and researchers put together a model in recent years that would give more insight into the likelihood of this theory. They took things into account, like sun-like stars that are not too close or too far from planets that are similar to Earth, as well as how frequently there are deadly radiation blasting supernovas, which of course could prove to be a huge problem for life forms, as well as the time that it takes for intelligent life to evolve, provided all the conditions are right. And once the evolution has taken place, how long it would take for a tool-bearing form of life to then destroy itself. That's a lot of factors to consider, and through all of this, it was found that the highest likelihood of life before ours in the Milky Way emerged around 5.5 billion years ago, which would place that before our planet was even formed. This of course would have provided plenty of time for all of the events I just mentioned to have occurred. Not only this, but with a recent James Webb Telescope discovery, we might be learning that galaxies existed long before what we previously thought. James Webb has been using its incredibly powerful technology to glimpse back into the earliest moments of our universe, and just this week it was announced that there are some distant galaxies that predate what we once thought was possible. This is all to say that there are now millions of extra years that have been added to the timeline where some form of life may have developed. And who knows, maybe these life forms do still exist, but we are just too far away for us to reach. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Roswell Incident. One of the most famous alien conspiracy stories of all time, this whole rigmarole started in 1947 when some sort of crash took place near a ranch in Roswell, New Mexico. Shortly after this, the Roswell Army Airfield released a statement saying that they had recovered a flying disc from the ranch, but the Army quickly retracted the statement and said that it wasn't that, but instead was a conventional weather balloon. Alright, heard that before. This was a little sketchy, but most people let it slide until the 1970s. What happened in the 70s is that a retired lieutenant colonel began to speak out. In an interview with a UFO researcher, he said that the weather balloon story was a cover-up and that alien remains were actually recovered from the crash site. There were both first and second-hand witnesses who claimed that not only were there at least one, but possibly more alien spacecrafts that had crashed at the scene, but also that extraterrestrial remains were also recovered by the military, who then began to engage in a cover-up. In 1994, the story changed from a weather balloon to a nuclear test surveillance balloon from Project Mogul, and it was stated that the stories of the alien bodies were probably just test dummies that had been dropped from high altitudes. I'm not gonna lie, the whole thing sounds a little sketchy. I obviously wasn't there, so I can't say for certain what happened, but someone is definitely lying about it, that's all I know. In our number 8 spot today, we have the radio signals. Basically, we're getting radio signals from somewhere, but we just aren't quite sure where. It started in 2007 when we began getting what are called fast radio bursts, and they are a totally mysterious phenomena to scientists. These bursts are only a few milliseconds long, but they emit more energy than the sun does in 24 hours. All of this is already super cool and interesting, but here's an even crazier thing about them. The main thing that we know about these bursts is that they're coming from outside of our own galaxy. Space is very cool and very unbelievable. This obviously has led a lot of experts to believe that it could possibly be coming from an advanced civilization that is quite far away, and they may be trying to contact us, but we just don't have the technology to interpret the signals. Maybe one day scientists will figure out a way to accept whatever message it is they are trying to send, or maybe one day we'll get a visit from them and then they'll be mad at us for not answering their messages and just leaving them on red. Either way, it's all very cool and very interesting. In our number 7 spot today, we have the cigar-shaped UFO. Alright, let's set the stage. It's 2:45 a.m. on July 24th, 1948, and there are 20 passengers aboard a twin-engine propeller plane that is at 5,000 feet being flown from Houston to Atlanta by pilot Clarence S. Childs and co-pilot John B. Whitted. Out of the 20 passengers on board, 19 of them are asleep at these early morning hours, and everything seems to be going as per usual until it wasn't. The 2 pilots and the 1 passenger who was awake all witnessed the same thing about 20 miles southeast of Montgomery, Alabama. About a week after the incident, the pilot explained explained what he had seen by saying, quote, "It was clear there were no wings present, that it was powered by some jet or other type of power, shooting flame from the rear some 50 feet. There were 2 rows of windows which indicated an upper and lower deck, and from inside these windows a very bright light was glowing. Underneath the ship there was a blue glow of light. By his estimates, he watched the UFO for about 10 seconds before it completely vanished. The co-pilot gave a similar explanation and also added, quote, "The object was cigar-shaped and seemed to be about 100 feet in length. The fuselage appeared to be about 3 times the circumference of a B-29 fuselage. It had 2 rows of windows, an upper and a lower. The windows were very large and seemed square. They were white with light which seemed to be caused by some type of combustion. I asked Captain Childs what we had just seen and he said that he didn't know." While this is obviously very strange and peculiar, what has driven UFO enthusiasts even more is the fact that this strange sighting was of course later investigated by the US government, but the results of that investigation have allegedly been mostly destroyed. Does that mean that maybe they found something they aren't willing to share yet? Some believe that perhaps the pilots and passenger witnessed a secret Soviet spycraft, but others believe it definitely was something of the extraterrestrial variety. In our number 6 spot today we have the NASA Viking experiment. So this is one of the more debated ones on today's list, but that does not mean that it isn't evidence. In 1976, NASA's Viking landers tested the soil on Mars and found some chemicals that could be attributed to signs of life. The soil was mixed with radioactive carbon-labeled nutrients and then tested for the production of radioactive methane gas. The test ended up receiving a positive result, which could indicate that something in the soil is metabolizing the nutrients to produce the gas. Despite further efforts, there still hasn't been any life found, but one of the scientists who worked on this original project, and others as well, stand by what they found and argue that the technology at the time wasn't advanced enough to find the key evidence of life. Hopefully with the Perseverance rover that is, digging in the soil up there now, maybe now is the time that we have the technology to find the true answers behind this one. In our number 5 spot today we have the Mount Rainier Incident. This incident took place when Kenneth Arnold was en route from Chehalis, Washington to Yakima, Washington on June 24th, 1947. Kenneth was traveling in a privately owned plane when he suddenly saw a bright flash on his wing. He looked around and this is when he saw a chain of 9 unidentified flying objects approaching Mount Rainier. He explained that he, quote, "could see their outline quite plainly against the snow as they approached the mountain." He continued on saying, quote, "They flew very close to the mountain tops, directly south to southeast down the hog's back of the range, flying like geese in a diagonal chain-like line as if they were linked together." From here he explained that, quote, "They were approximately 20 or 25 miles away and I couldn't see a tail on them. I watched for about 3 minutes, a chain of saucer-like things at least 5 miles long swerving in and out of the high mountain peaks. They were flat like a pie pan and so shiny they reflected the sun like a mirror." He also told investigators that he had never seen anything travel that fast in his life. Unfortunately, Kenneth's story was met with disbelief and actually a lot of ridicule. This made Kenneth quite resentful, but he said, quote, "They can call me Einstein, Flash Gordon, or just a screwball, but I am absolutely certain of what I saw." He added that if he ever saw a phenomenon in the sky, quote, "even if it were a 10-story building flying through the air, he would not say a word about it." In our number 4 spot today we have the fossilized microbes. Another piece of controversial evidence that came from Mars was announced in 1996. NASA scientists announced that they had potentially found what appeared to maybe fossilized microbes in a lump of Martian rock. It is likely that this rock came off during some sort of Mars collision and just casually floated around the solar system for, 15 million years before landing in Antarctica in 1984. Just casual space stuff. After analyzing the rock, it was revealed that it contained organic molecules and small specks of mineral magnetite, which sometimes is found in the bacteria on Earth. Upon further analysis with an electron microscope, it was claimed that there were signs of nanobacteria. Since then, some claim that the magnetite wasn't that similar to those found in bacteria, and that there is a belief that the signs of nanobacteria could have been grown in a lab. In our number 3 spot today we have the Big Flap. Back in 1952, while the panic over flying saucers was very real, there were a bunch of strange reports of potential UFO sightings in the skies of Washington, D.C. These sightings later became known as the Big Flap, and they were being reported by civilians as well as military radar operators and pilots. In fact, there were so many people reporting these UFOs that a special intelligence unit of the US Air Force was sent to investigate. What really sparked a lot of concern with these sightings is when radar operators at National watched the objects fly past the White House and Capitol building. This is when 2 F-95 1994, interceptor jets were sent to investigate, but both times, as they approached the mysterious objects showing on their radar screens, they would just suddenly disappear. In the end, as a result of the investigation, what they found, or really the lack of findings, combined with the official explanation that was released, only worked to fuel some very early conspiracy theories that the government was working to hide the evidence that proves the existence of alien life. In our number 2 spot today, we have Europa. One of Jupiter's moons, called Europa, has a red tinge to it, and in 2001, NASA scientists revealed that it's possible that alien microbes might be responsible for this red color. The surface of the moon is mostly ice, but it has been shown that it reflects infrared radiation in a very bizarre way. This means that something is binding it together, but researchers haven't been able to come up with the correct combination of elements and compounds to make the data make sense. There are some bacteria on Earth that can thrive in extreme conditions, and that also have that red and brown color, which could potentially be responsible for the color on this moon. The surface temperature might be too cold for them to survive, but the warmer interior might be where they are actually located. Some geological activity on the moon could then push them closer to the surface, where they are then flash frozen in place. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the astronaut sightings. We can sit here on Earth all day and talk about the potential for alien life, but who knows more than the people who have actually been to space, which of course are astronauts. Definitely on the list of coolest and scariest jobs in the entire world, there haven't been a ton of people who have had the unbelievable privilege of experiencing space firsthand, but there are even less of them who have claimed to see something that could potentially be proof of alien existence. People who have claimed these sort of things include Edgar Mitchell, Catherine Coleman, and Dr. Brian O'Leary. The very interesting part about many of these claims is that they also include some sort of government cover-up as well. There was also Buzz Aldrin, who spoke about his Apollo 11 experience, and he detailed the crew seeing something flying alongside them, and at first they believed it was the final stage of a detached rocket, but then Mission Control confirmed that it was actually 6,000 miles away from them, leaving them with no answers on what the flying object could actually be. I can't imagine going to space at all, let alone encountering a UFO flying right beside me. Also, I can't believe that I hadn't heard of that story before, because to me, that sounds like full-blown alien contact. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I will see you again soon. Bye!